Hello, Debt-Free Degree beloveds. Y'all, I am so excited today. I have the most amazing guest on Pontification with a Pro. It is Chris Dove, and she has extensive experience in higher education. She has extensive experience in financial advising, and she is also a fellow author. And so, oftentimes, beloveds, you will hear me walk my guests through and kind of ask some questions. Honest to goodness, just even in our little pre-interview time, I just feel like saying, here's the microphone for 15 minutes, Chris. Just impart whatever wisdom you can share in that amount of time. So anyway, I am delighted that you're here, Chris. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. And as I said, just share a little bit about you and whichever direction you want to go. If you want to talk about the financial advising first or your college experience first. And I'm just delighted to learn from you today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I'm deciding how far to go back, but it took me 17 years to earn my bachelor degree. And
Love it.
so,
Okay,
yeah,
I'm going
so
to give you a pom pom for that. I've known for my pom
yay.
poms. So good for you.
So,
Excellent.
yeah. Yeah, so I did a year and then I dropped out to compete in ballroom dancing. I came back for a year and then got pregnant and had a child. I came back for another year and then my husband was diagnosed. My children's father passed. He had a brain tumor and he spent the next 3.5 years being sick. And then after he passed, we got survivor benefits from Social Security, and I wanted to be home with my children. And so I moved us to the middle of nowhere, Illinois, and I got my first master's from Western Illinois University. I finished my bachelor and then did my master's. And we did that on living on survivor benefits in a town of 3,000 where most of the people were living on Social Security, and we didn't feel poor at all. My kids didn't, realize we were living on almost nothing. And then by the time I finished, I had been a TA, and I had enjoyed teaching, and they asked me to teach at Spoon River Community College. And I loved it. After 2 weeks in, I said I could teach the rest of my life. And so then when I graduated, I took a job at Illinois Valley Community College, and I taught there for 6 years. And then I moved to Durham Tech, running from the cold weather, and taught at Durham Tech Community College for another 6 years. And then I actually bumped over to Illinois State University and I put together their bystander empowerment program. It was peer-to-peer education about stalking, domestic violence, sexual assault, warning signs, and how to step in, and how to reach out to resources. And then after that, which was it was tough topic. After that, my children were my final child. My daughter was moving out of the house, and my husband's like, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be an author. I always said I would write in the summers when wasn't teaching, and then I taught every summer for 18 years. And so I took a year off to write, and I wrote a couple children's books. And then he said, what do you want to do now? And my daughter said she wishes she could be a professional student. So he said, well, do you want me to sign over what's left of my GI Bill? So I got my second master's on his GI Bill,
Uh,
and actually was paid housing money. So I was paid to be a student again.
wow.
And I got my degree in financial planning and financial psychology from Creighton, which is one of the few places teaching financial psychology at a master's level. And since then, now I do workshops in the community for free, donation only, on money mindset and beginning investments. And then I also have coaching and consulting clients who are not free. Um, but I only see 16 clients maximum because I still reserve every Friday to write. And I'm working on a book called Beyond the Piggy Bank that's about raising financially savvy children, and very excited about it.
Yes, 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 yes. So all of that is so intriguing, and there's like a million ways that my brain wants to go and ask you questions. I think one of the things that might be new to my audience, it's certainly new to me, is financial psychology. So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what that means and how you incorporate it in what you're doing today, perhaps even in the book?
Yes. And so financial psychology is about all the ways we get in our own way financially. And sometimes it's because of the way our brain's wired as humans. Sometimes our brain, like for example, we're wired to be loss averse. So if we're looking at gains, we react differently than if we're looking at potential losses. And this makes sense given that humans, as well as we do because of our culture and technology and our opposable thumbs, as a species, we're not the fastest animal. We don't have very thick skin. We don't have sharp teeth. We don't have claws. We're more prey than predator. And so from our history as humans, we're loss averse because we had a lot to be afraid of at one point before we had all the technology. And so we still have that fear. The example is if you hear something rustling in the bushes and you think it's a rabbit and it's a lion, you're in trouble, right? And
Yeah.
so we have this loss aversion, and we also have confirmation bias and anchoring bias. So if I say 21 and then I tell you there's a stock for $19, you think, oh, that's a great deal, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
you're comparing it to an arbitrary number that I just threw out. And then we tend to reinforce our own beliefs. So this
Yes.
plays out, of course, in many areas other than finance. But so it's all of that. But then it's also how our socialization impacts us. And one example of this is people who are raised as female tend to have less exposure to ideas around investing than people raised as male. And this has to do with what's acceptable based on the gender norms of our society and a history of who was invited to the table financially and who wasn't.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm
And
even thinking like in homes, how you see that play out. And then I'm curious is what I would call the student loan crisis. When students are graduating with 50, 75, $100,000 in debt, that to me is a crisis, and is part of it coming about from a financial psychology standpoint for societal norms.
definitely, I mean, there's two pieces of this, right? One is what we've deemed acceptable with debt in general. Like we're very freely taking on debt as a society. And, there's like houses, people used to buy houses outright. You can't. My professors graduated with no debt. Um, in a lot of times, like unless you know all the ins and outs, you can't. And especially if your parents weren't college educated, like if you're first gen college, you're far less likely to know the little tips and tricks and things you need to do to reduce your costs coming out. And then, of course, students are offered lots and lots of money for a lifestyle that perhaps is more than one should have in college when you don't have money
Uh-huh.
of your own, right?
Yes.
um, but and then yeah, and so yeah, there's many reasons. The psychology of us individually, and then the sociology, right? The
Yeah.
cultural norm, which if everyone around you is living on loans and everyone around you, it's
Right.
hard to say, my daughter graduated debt free, and she had to say, I'm going to work part time when my friends aren't, and
Uh-huh.
I'm going to take fewer classes than my friends, and I'm going to live at home when a lot of my friends aren't. And so she made a lot of financial decisions that went upstream, that went against the
Right.
grain. And
Right.
so then there's the peer pressure to be doing the things that everyone else is doing, even if the things they're doing aren't necessarily long term responsible. And I think that's the other thing. So, the psychology, if you think about diet or fitness, it's exactly the same thing. Knowledge doesn't matter when it comes to diet and fitness, and finance is the same way. When you have to preference the future over the present, knowledge isn't enough.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
You
yes, yes. I do these reels for my Debt Free Degree Club, and I'm gonna quote you on that and do a reel on that. That's so powerful. That's so powerful. One of the things that I talk about in the book is we're each given 168 hours a week. There are 33 states that if you work for their higher education system, then you get free tuition and fees at their school and for full-time employees. And so
Mhm.
40 hours a week is 24% of your week. So you still have 76%, even if you're working full time.
Yeah.
And for a lot of students, they say they can't do that. They can't even do part time. But you have some tips for folks, for students who are working while they're in school. Can you share some of those?
Yes, and I do. One of them is on the side of how of your time allocation. And this, when I was a sociology professor,
Can I
I
just
also
stop you right there, Chris?
had.
You were the only person other than me that says time allocation. I always hear
Oh,
time management, and my
yeah.
coach actually says calendar control. Love that too. But I love time allocation. Yay. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Yes. And so one thing, and this is on the flip side, is beware working too much. A lot of my students, when I was a professor, and also when I advised some students when I was a professor at Durham Tech, and I would see them piling too many classes on or piling too many classes for their workload. And I'd say, when you're juggling and you drop a ball, you don't just drop the one, you drop them all, And so I would have students who they would look at how their classes and they would count the hours they're in class and then count the hours they're at work. But for every hour you're in class, you're expected to do 2 hours of work outside of class. So if you are doing a 3 hour class, that is 9 hours of your time. And I can't tell you how many students struggled because they didn't set their work and their schoolwork up
Yes.
based on that calculation. Now,
Yes.
the flip side is the students who I had who did really well had certain types of jobs. A lot of times they had jobs where you could work on schoolwork at work. Either they worked in a library. I had a few nannies who were really successful,
Uh,
people who did rover or house sitting, but a lot of people who had jobs where you could do your homework while you were on the clock at work. And then other people who were really successful had work that was flexible. Maybe they were Uber driving, or maybe, but they had jobs where I would tell students would say, "Oh, I can't come in tomorrow to class. I have to work." And I'd say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. You're putting your job ahead of your career.
mhm,
You have to prioritize your career
mhm,
over your job, but not every job will let you do that." And so some jobs, especially jobs that have tuition assistance, tend to be really good at scheduling you for school, right? So like UPS, Amazon, Chipotle, Starbucks, like a lot of these places where they have tuition reimbursement or tuition assistance, or I'm trying to think, there's a few, I think Taco Bell has a scholarship program. Um, and some banks, Bank of America, but places where they're paying for your school, they're going to likely be more accommodating
uh-huh.
of your
Uh-huh.
needing to go to school because a lot of people who work there are going to be students. And so they're student friendly. And obviously, if you work on campus, my poor son, when I was at Illinois Valley Community College, um, I had we had not only did we have free tuition, but other professors would give copies of their books out to it was like a courtesy we did for our colleagues, right? And so I would lend other colleagues if their children were in my class, I would lend them books.
Wow.
And it was a huge thing. But then we moved to Durham Tech right when my son was starting college, and he was not only not free, he was out of state.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, I can't thank enough somebody in the financial aid office who told me we were moving there a week before the semester started. And she said, go to the DMV the day you move here because his year that he has to pay out of state, the clock is set based on the date on his driver's license. So if
Wow.
he had not gotten his license in the first week we had moved there, he would have had a whole
Another semester, or yeah.
another year at out of state.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. But he ended up getting a job on campus. And so and so he got a job on campus that came with a waiver of his out of state tuition. And so there's all these little nuances. And I would say the thing is you have to ask, like I've had people who go to a college and they think they're going to live at home only to find out that college has a residency requirement.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Or, and so you have to know the ins and outs, because every college has their own little perks that aren't even really advertised. But if you talk to people and you dig around, they'll say, oh, well, if you work in the library or in the counseling center versus the athletic center, there's a different perk.
Right.
um,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so much is about getting to the right people and getting to the right places, and network as a bonus, networking will help you for the rest of your life. So
Yes, I talk to my students all the time about networking. And honestly, Chris, it's how you and I met. I mean, we were in a Facebook
yes,
group and you
yeah,
were talking about your financial advising agency. And I was like, oh, can I please interview you? Because I really wanted to share you with my community. And I love your passion for helping students. I mean, of course, at Debt Free Degree, we're all about zero debt. I mean, zero
yes,
student loans.
yes,
And, with enough lead time, it's entirely possible for people to be debt free. What
yes,
happens, and I love your analogy about the weight loss, because I've had two people this week. We're recording this at the end of July. I've had two people this week who've reached out that there's a 5-digit gap between what they have now and starting in a few weeks. And they're like, oh, Elizabeth, Debt Free Degree, I heard about you. Can you help me? I mean, it's
no,
like saying, to Weight Watchers, I need to lose 100 pounds by my son's wedding, which is in 2 weeks.
yeah,
There's
for the
not a
20-year
sustainable
reunion.
way. Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And so this is this long term, and I think about your daughter, and I think about how you were talking about she had to swim upstream. She had to, you know, really overcome some level of peer pressure. Perhaps it wasn't the worst peer pressure ever, but
yeah,
still some level of doing things differently. And I think about how you made decisions from the time your children were born to
yeah,
say, we're going to do things differently. And we're going to do things where relationships are important, and not necessarily me being out in the world and making a ton of money. And so
yeah,
I know that that message was pervasive for your daughter to make the decisions that she made. Perhaps overtly you said, oh, you will be debt free, but perhaps even subtly in your body language, or, the things that you talked about. And that's one of the things I talk to parents about, is setting that expectation from day one, and
yeah,
not being like, I want you to have this degree at this school, and then, oh, by the way, layer on a debt free degree. But debt
yeah,
free degree is the end goal. And then
yeah.
everything else that leads up to that. So, in closing, because I could listen to you talk forever and ever and ever, and you are such a love. Um, what is your one piece of advice, or your next step for either students or parents, in terms of financial planning and college?
So, and are these for the people who have a long runway?
It's wherever you want, whatever your best tip is.
Okay, so for and I'm going to double down a little bit, but for those who are starting early, it's take advantage of the time value of money. And so, and I say this in investing generally, I tell my daughter, like, you could invest like 500 a year, and that's the equivalent of me investing 50,000 a year, because you have compounding on your side. And so for people who don't know what compounding is, it's interest earned on interest. And so if you put, $100 into an account in the market, in an index market, every 7 years it'll double. And so you have this doubling happening. And so the earlier you start, like, when you're having a baby shower, do your registry for a 529. Like, really
Yes.
do it.
Yes. I love
Yeah.
it.
And then for those who are starting late, the important thing is understanding that it's never too late. Even if you're in school, you can actually get, so with 529 accounts, you can actually get in some states, you can get state tax advantages by paying money today into the 529 that you're going to pay for tuition in 3 days. And so there's just
Wow.
running it through that account can save you on state taxes, depending on where you live.
Okay.
And so, really, what you need to do is whatever you are studying in life, you should study money also. Because
Yes.
if you understand money, you can do anything. You can build wealth no matter how much you make.
Yes.
You can build wealth no matter what career you choose, and you can live debt free no matter what you're doing. If you understand money and you're willing to defer some gratification and do a little effort tracking, you can live debt free and build wealth regardless of your occupation, regardless of where you've come from, regardless of where you are right now.
Chris, you are a love and a joy. And I don't know if you're still teaching sociology, but if you're not in the classroom, you certainly should be. And so, are you still in a classroom?
I'm not, but I do financial workshops. I do some online and I do some in person, and I'm hoping to bring them to universities starting this year.
Yay! Okay,
So
that's fabulous. That is absolutely fabulous. Again, so excited about your book. So thankful that you were here. And Debt Free Degree Beloveds, this has been Pontification with a Pro, and I'll be back with our next guest. And so thank you again, Chris, and we appreciate you.
thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.